My husband Keith and my alleged best friend, Lisa, red-handed, totally into one another, diverse enough to not notice me jaw-dropping. Notwithstanding the fact that my regular impulse-driven actions would imply screaming or yelling, that did not happen. Instead, I took my phone out, pressed the record button, sent the evidence to Lisa's husband, who was my college buddy, Rick. You see, we have always been into pranks, enjoying practical jokes on one another. I could not simply leave it the way it was. We indeed made a detailed plan to revenge Keith and Lisa. Watching Lisa's stuttery explanation and Keith's guilty face as we entered the room was more than just worth it. Reciting my offer for a divorce and, consequently, providers of grounds, I got to know Lisa's actual reasons for approaching my husband. Obviously, as always, it was nothing about loving Keith. At that point, I could only shake my head, not believing all the facts. That was my story. I am Julie, aged 28, with a 2-year-old husband, Keith, and all of a sudden, my world fell apart. But it was not always this way. I met my husband during our college years when Keith was just a test pursuer, according to his words. We hung out within the same couple of friends and spent our lives on spontaneous road trips or cheap, fun adventures. I knew nothing on the subject back then, of course. Lisa was my friend since freshman orientation. I remember how I was charmed by her back then, the way she was always smiling, always stunning, always open. Needless to say, we became friends quickly. And even as adults, we managed to squeeze in a couple of catch-ups into our busy schedules. This time, when I told her about Keith's confession, she seemed to be genuinely shocked and thrilled. Then the surprise came. I knew that Lisa had been dating the same guy since senior year, and sure enough, she got engaged before I did. Again, I assumed her reluctance had something to do with the fact that she was clearly against marrying him, but I couldn't figure out why. Did she really agree it should have been Keith, or was the woman going mad for some reason? Every time Lisa and I would catch up, she would be joking about leaving everything and becoming a housewife. Of course, at first, I didn't take it seriously. After she quit her job immediately after the engagement, it was a clear sign that the woman truly believed in her happily ever after. That time, she mentioned how we should arrange a double date with Keith and my husband, Rick. The latter was an old friend. He and I were in the seminar group together. Keith and Rick, however, never had a chance to meet before. Therefore, I didn't have a reason to assume that something would go wrong. First, everything was going according to the plan. Ironically, the usually passive Lisa took the lead, acting unusually happy. For the first time for at least half a year, I saw her relieved of anxiety. Then everything went upside down. For weeks, we schemed about setting up the perfect surprise for Lisa and Rick to commemorate their upcoming marriage, and Lisa discarded it like nothing. Then she turned the spotlight on Keith and me and started a strange interrogation about our connection. Some of her remarks were particularly bizarre, and I couldn't help but wonder if she had had one too many shots prior to. Wham! Lisa came out of nowhere with a wicked glint in her eye and an arsenal of secrets about me, portraying me as a guy-crazy madwoman. With disapproving eyes from Keith that made my gut twist, I felt dragged through the mud, forced to bear the brunt of whatever humiliations Lisa dreamed up. I attempted to make amends with her, but she kept going, expanding on tales and amplification untruths. There was something sinister about the situation, knowing I was outnumbered, as we marooned off, making the trip back in a profoundly uneasy quiet. I imagined I was high. It was insane, just insanity. I couldn't believe that only a couple of minutes ago I was jabbering frantically to clarify Lisa's gossip to Keith. His apprehension was hidden behind a grin, and I could tell it trembled, but Lisa just stunned me with, "Speaks true, huh?" When everybody is drunk, I was stricken speechless. I was convinced and stunned. I felt like I'd been hit squarely in the jowls. A fast forward to my wedding day with Lisa and Rick, and there she was, radiant as ever. But for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to bring that smile. But then, out of the blue, half a year later, Keith is falling on one knee and popping the question. It is strange how all the negative feelings from Lisa's words disappeared into thin air, and suddenly I was on cloud nine. I kept on extending my wildest dreams, sending Lisa an invitation and an announcement, all while burying the hatchet. His response was genuine enough, and for a moment I thought maybe we have left our drama. But then my wedding day comes, and she is nowhere to be found. Some friends saw her just a while ago. Others tell me she made their way to the bridal suite with me. I try not to dwell on it too much. People drop everything to some things, right? But then, as I am about to enter the aisle, who would have thought? They stroll in, Keith and Lisa, side by side. My heart skips a beat as soon as I lay eyes on them, but I gather all my strength and plaster on my biggest smile. Keith, so you're already here. And what do you mean, Heath, my husband, is waiting for me back at the bridal suite? How can he wish me, you look beautiful, in such a casual tone of a friend, and then turn to Keith and compliment him as if they've been friends for years? Before I even know what is happening, Lisa walks in as though she is fashionably late for a casual hangout. Keith and I got caught up in a conversation that we forgot we were to join you, she says, laughing. The thoughts of hanging out are nowhere near my face despite the upcoming party. My face freezes as I cannot even hide my disbelief. Unfortunately, that is still not the end. After the wedding, Heath and I get into a full-blown fight, leaving me asking him to address issues he has with Lisa. Reluctantly, and in my mind, avoiding my eyes, he dares finally rant, "Cut off that your friend." What? I gasps as my corrected jaw drops to the ground, my heart breaking every second I support my words. Just a friend of his, Heath remarks, but his silence brings cold fear to my heart. Everything is still not over. The worst part is that Heath then claims that Lisa is too good at attracting men, reminiscing about the song by the classic English rock group Def Leppard. He implies that she is a kind of a man-eater, and I am sure he is wrong. And then, out of the blue, I am hit hard. How dared he talk about my best friend more than anything? Without thinking, I bite back the pain in the words, "So you're sick that you have married me, huh?" I am desperate to yell back at his apology, to say that it is all just a mistake. But his silence is too clear, and suddenly our marriage is hanging by a thread where so much happiness is what was once it. We see that in an effort to restore our relationship, I started my part-time work and balanced this with customer service and house chores. My schedule went away, and I forgot about Lisa. But after a few days, I felt I was doing something wrong every time I looked back at it. After my illness, from which I had to cut my activity at home, I realized the weakness of my marriage. "Hey, why didn't you do the laundry?" "I need it for tomorrow." He half snapped, his frustration leaking from his every pore. "Sorry, I didn't realize." Tried to explain my thoughts of everything, sensing the burden of his disappointment crush me. "You should at least take care of the house properly. I won't stand for lazy meals when I'm back from work tired," he mumbled, stomping away with a cloud of wrath over his head. My understanding, sweet Keith, was replaced by a complete stranger. Never had I ever thought marriage could be so challenging. Despite feeling horrible, I dragged myself to work that day. My boss noticed my face was pale and I couldn't put my trembling hands standing still. He almost begged me to leave and go get some rest. I gave up after 2 failed attempts to leave it all behind. Almost unable to hold myself from sheer exhaustion, I stopped by a small street cafe where I never visited. My heart sank as I approached the house. The curtains in the bedroom were closed, which was not my case when I left it in the morning. Fear shot through my body. Someone might have robbed us. Wait, had I closed the curtains before leaving in my painful haze? Listening to the voices inside the house, I opened the door quietly. A woman's voice screamed through the thick air of my house. I decided to enter the bedroom quietly. My fears were realized and my brain blanked out. There were two of them, Keith and Lisa. How could it happen? When did it happen? Their words kept ringing in my head. She still hasn't figured it out, Lisa said. Keith laughed. Nope. She left for work like nothing happened. She welcomed me back in her arms. It was such a betrayal. They were together before I married him. It meant he knew that. So why marry me? If I had started dating Lisa earlier, we would be married now. Keith babbled. And you not leaving him? She asked, her voice betraying excitement. Affairs are more thrilling, she answered. I felt a taste in my mouth and no other signs of inspiration. In anger and humiliation so strong, I almost ran towards my phone in my purse, unleashing its power on the perpetrators unworthy of my marriage. They were so lost in each other's company, they never should have noticed the small screen on. For what felt like ages, I recorded every word they said about Rick and me. I was shocked by my own husband's betrayal. A wave of nausea hit me, but I stepped out the back to catch my breath. My mind raced despite my feverish state, an impossible cocktail of medication and overblown justice. Rick's call took me out of the haze. So, they're cheating, huh? He sounded disappointed, met with my silence. You ready to nail them? I nodded. He gave me the location of a bar. It was Lisa's and Keith's hookup spot. Did you check it out? I asked as my eyes surveyed our surroundings. The mischievous glint in Rick's eyes only grew. We're ready to shake them up a bit. My heart was racing as I saw Lisa and Keith drive past. Rick's calm demeanor soothed me. This is a great spot for a lookout, he whispered positively. I watched him dial Lisa's number with a sickly smile on my face. Hey, Lisa, where are you? His voice gave her nothing. Near home, just in the supermarket. She was trying to contain the panic. Great, I'll pick you up in a bit. He paused, prolonging the pleasure. Wait, don't bother. I'll meet you there. Goodbye. Lisa's panicked whisper confirmed the success of our prank. Keith, what do we do? She asked, unable to suppress the fear. I laughed. I must have seemed like a puppet, controlled by Rick. My school sweetheart has a bitter side, and I am finally going to employ it. I had no idea Rick even has this side to him. He was the high school ladiesman. So when he started dating Lisa, it was the hottest news on the class chatter. Julie, what are you waiting for? They teased as I dialed Keith. Keith, where are you? Where do you think? I'm in the office working. It's noisy, I know. It's a meeting. You know how loud they are. Just too much work. I could barely keep face. Too many signals? Surely Keith can hear how relaxed I am. I couldn't help it. Those expressions are a clearly open book. Oh, by the way, I'm actually outside your office right now. See you in a second. I grinned. What? But I said I was in the meeting. There's a man by the window who looks just like you. I'll go say hi. Bye. I closed the line, relishing in their distress. The moment Keith and Lisa ran outside, I saw their shock. I thought you were at the office. Did you teleport here after shopping in the supermarket? I showed my teeth to the enemy. You've been lying to us all the time, and the most disgusting thing is a lie. I am waiting for an apology. But instead of confessing and begging for forgiveness, they accuse me and Rick and start to turn the tables from the worst villains of revenge film. Who is the worst here? Translucent, and all is back. Lisa's face turned red, blood of anger remaining on it, and she even started yelling at me. Rick is working, and you, Julia, seduced someone else's husband. She put it in such a vicious way. It helped me suggest to go here. Forget it. I won't let them throw it off. But Lisa stood still, shaking from everything. You took my husband. It's not the time to figure out who is guilty and who is not. Lisa's voice is shaking. Why are you pretending to be clear if we caught you? I raised my voice. I heard Lisa is starting to play foolish. Julie, calm down. It's not like you think. I just hadn't consulted with Keith about something. Enough. I sighed and put my hand in my pocket. You've been pretending to be best friends, pretending. I know everything. I managed to get my phone out of my pocket and turned on the video. Look, it's all recorded. Keith's voice faltered. When did you take this? A surveillance camera? No, obviously, it's handheld. I recorded it directly. I answered, and although I succeeded in keeping my voice even, everything inside me was already churning. And sadly, the whole truth arose from this thought. Lisa's visit today was not a one-time thing. I was overtaken by madness and disgust from the thought that they filled my bed together every day. Good, I think I'll divorce Keith, and I'll divorce Lisa all at once. I decided, and they reacted to it quite differently. Keith's face lit up with a smile while Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Lisa, yes, now we can get married, Keith said excitedly, and Lisa's answer surprised me. What? Am I getting divorced? She asked, uncertainty trembling in her voice. Heath, what do you mean? You said you would marry me. You said Rick wouldn't divorce you. Keith reminded me, confused, but Lisa interrupted him. Oh, are you talking about? Shut up? Shut up, annoyed Lisa. Rick, I'm sorry, only you, she said desperately, and I was at a loss. I didn't say I wouldn't divorce, did I? Keith made that up by himself. Live in your stupid world. She began to speak quickly and sound panicky, and I panicked as well because I understood that she was just trying to lie. Hey, what are you talking about? You're making things up, I said sternly. Now I have to get the truth out of her. This video seems like you were having fun. Keith made me do it. Lisa attempted in order to glue the remains of her untruth to what I had seen before me. Keith's response was a sharp blade, removing her lies altogether. What? No, you wanted to do this in Julie's bed, since it was more thrilling. Keith whittled down her falsehoods, and the rest fell into place. Lisa, you again never liked Keith, did you? I probed, my voice choked with disappointment, but her response undeniably affirmed my aging consciousness. Honestly, no. The only one I love is Rick, she confirmed, and my spirit was a bloodied spearhead through the chest. What now? You were the first person to come to me, Rick announced, his voice dim with disbelief. The mock was now more terrible to me, having unraveled Lisa's deceptive reality. Keith informed me that after the meal we had recently shared, Lisa had texted him suggesting that she had left because she was concerned about me. However, in private, she was complaining about me. I recollected the previous college experiences and realized that this was not the first time she had utilized relationships to gain an advantage. Julie's a real man's woman. You don't know, she flirts with them all day. Lisa's malicious sickness came back to my perception, but I understood what had occurred. I had recaptured my humility. Now it was time to shake her lies apart. I'm scared she may be assaulted someday. Keith had murmured the duskiest words he had ever said in my ear. I've never had that thought before, but she really acts differently in front of men who are close to her. She just pretends. His words shocked me. I did not anticipate this, I said, a strange mixture of surprise and disappointment clouding my voice. How could he have believed Lisa so easily? You have been in love with me for so long, and yet you believed Lisa the soonest, I said. The distinct note of disappointment in my voice remained unanswered. At first, I did not believe her, she said. I brushed it off, but then Lisa continued to show up and say, Edmund, I don't know what happened next. Keith waved his hand distractingly. There was no point in our discussion, so we agreed that he would have to come to me later, and I went to my parents' house, afraid to meet him. But Keith's last-ditch effort pleaded for itself. You want me to sleep in the same bed, I said flatly. At Keith's pale expression, I knew that he finally understood the severity of his actions. I'm sorry, Ma. I did something that I cannot fix. Keith's second attempt to apologize hung heavily in the air above us. But it was too late. I felt relieved that I had finally stood up for myself and confessed, "By the way, I shot that video today." Keith cracked before my eyes. He started crying and begged. But watching him like this only made me stronger. "I'm not returning to that house. I will file for divorce," I said, and no pity echoed in my voice. "No, wait. Please reconsider," Keith pleaded, and there was desperation in his voice. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. "You've been betraying me even before we got married. How can we start over?" I asked sadly. "And maybe you still wanted to divorce me here. Lisa deceived me, and now—" Keith comforted me, and my voice was silent from all of the sadness and betrayal. "You're important to me." Keith's voice broke through my heart like a knife. "It's just a pastime, a joke," and I felt slapped. "What a joke?" I asked loudly. I almost screamed at him. "Do you think this is fun? It's been over 2 years. Give me back this time." Perhaps I screamed too loud on the street, and it drew a ring of curious men. Keith cried pleadingly, but I left him in the crowd. In a few days, Rick and I hired shirts and went to the divorce service negotiation. We had a reason. We had a lot of evidence and facts. Lisa's eyes were tarnished from tears. She really loved Rick. She was only happy around him and didn't want to break up, but her honor was more important to her. "I love Rick most of all. That's why I don't want a divorce." Her words sounded like a sham. She flirted with husbands, supposedly just for fun. She didn't want others to be happy and seduced a friend's husband. I have no compassion for such pathetic pride. That's how it goes, and she lost her beloved husband. You wanted to infest Julie, didn't you? But you've always been at a loss to her. In his tone, there was only disappointment. Lisa bit her lip, feeling guilty. "Actually, at our school, Julie was very popular with men, not you. He put too much information into me," he said through the teeth, and the tension only grew. "You're not pre." "Don't look at me like I'm some poor thing," Lisa snapped agitatedly. "But you are poor," I snapped back at her, and then, without looking from side to side, Lisa evaded me. Immediately after that, Rick stepped between us. After him, Heath's arm was the last to cling to me, attracted by her movement. "Why did you fall in love with such a woman?" I confessed that everything I had now was completely incomprehensible and very disrespectful. "How? It was you who lied to people." "I am a princess." Lisa seemed to scream very loudly. As her empty-headed speech echoed in the room, it seemed that this was the real Lisa, who constantly demonstrated the silly exaltation of the village about herself and the best worst. Because of human abuse. "You are a scoundrel for protecting this Julie with a man." Lisa caught fire. This North Slope County lawyer insisted that Lisa solve the problem of her daughter-in-law with you in a psychiatric clinic. Then Rick explained. "I'm not mad," I protest. Later, the lawyer found their threads close to Lisa and found out the best way to put her in a psychiatric clinic. She was treated there for a month. Since then, Anne and I have never met. Lawyers did everything while we signed the divorce ritual. So minutes of peace with coffee with Rick followed, and then moments when I enjoy single life. "How were the times, huh?" he asks once. I feel so relieved, I answer. As I leave him in the evening and walk home, Keith suddenly appears as if from nowhere. "What do you want?" I ask rudely. "I realized how important you are, Julie. I wish we could start all over," Keith says sincerely. "That's impossible. I was only rigorous." "No? Why?" "This time I'll definitely make you happy," Keith insisted, his voice filled with despair. "I'll manage to make someone who has been cheated by you even before my marriage. I really regret seeing you that day and even talking to you that day, and I shot you for an hour over the phone," I confessed, and Keith, horrified, tried to say something. "This is impossible," Keith muttered, and his voice was full of suffering. "I see that every time I see you and remember it. I'm very irritated with you. Please do your job well and don't come out." I asked him to be gone as soon as possible. "I'm meeting my girlfriend to get married." I was shocked to hear myself say, "I'm actually meeting my boss now." Actually, the first time I saw Lisa was the night I saw my parents. I passed out, an ambulance was called to the hospital, and I was taken to the hospital. It was an intensified cold that I got because I was very sick that day. She's going through the paperwork with him. Then, when I confessed to Lisa that I was going out with a boss, and the boss was very scared of losing me, he came to my house soon and watched me go. Even though I'm crying, she's not the one who gets mad at me and helps me. I devoured the secret I had secreted. I trust my boss, and now I think that instead of hiring a marriage spouse for a date, that's possible. I had nothing to say. "It isn't something to say. You're watched by me all the time, Julie. I'm your fan. That's why I agreed to marry you somehow I didn't know, and that's why I didn't suspect anything from you. Even after I realized everything, that man could also deceive you. But I believe him more than to you." That was my acceptance of unto words and strengthening myself for Keith's reaction. It's when my boss asked the police to guard me after the conflict, yeah, PDAK. Keith's parents concealed him, not to let him know me anymore. Under the eyes of his close circle, Heath acquired a night work so that I might not be remembered at night, and my parents ordered his wages to bury his grunts. Lisa, she spotted Rick going somewhere. One day, and in despair, she destroyed him, the police picking her up. She found comfort in a mental clinic. Seeing Rick with another one was the greatest torment she enough. And I am my boss. Our relationships begin to develop in the havoc of events. He constantly spoke with me about his distrust and insecurity. However, he always led me through all my hardships leniently. I couldn't presume about marriage. However, the young man provides it. Rick and I interlocked, and at some point we showed him to the boss. They, in turn, also found each other. It appeared that Rick has his enterprise. I would have been glad he asked me to pay a visit because I finally decided to make my own decisions.